Hi, girls. Thanks for being here with me on another episode of The Pink Seat. And it's just been so much fun for me to be able to sit down and chat with you guys. But what I love the most about doing The Pink Seat is all of your comments and your interaction. So if you're watching with me today, would you just drop a quick emoji in the comments so I know that you're here, and we're just going to spend the next 30 minutes hanging out and talking about how we can continue to grow as women after God's heart. Today, I have a really special episode planned for you guys because my guest on the Pink Seat is my very handsome husband, Mike Melnick. So welcome, honey. I'm glad that you could be here with me.
Well, thanks for having me.
And you have no idea what we're going to be talking about today.
Not a clue.
No, we haven't rehearsed this. We haven't chatted about it. You've had done zero preparation.
Yep.
So we're going to just get some real honest discussion. And so today I want to talk about the very hot topic of marriage. And, you know, clearly marriage is hard work. If it wasn't hard work, then our divorce rates wouldn't be where they are. And it's so interesting to see, you know, and think about, we've been married for 16 years. Am I wrong? You're looking at me funny. I feel like I'm
doing
wrong.
math in my head real quick.
This year will be 17 years. And we have 3 kids. Does it feel like it's been 16 years to you?
No, when I hear like 16 years and we went on a big, 15-year anniversary vacation, and it's just like, man, I can't believe that it's been that long. I
know. I feel the same way. I feel like, how am I old enough, though, to have done anything for over 15 years?
Yeah, to think of that someone, I don't know, that I've had a relationship with someone for that long, it just...
doesn't seem possible.
Weird,
but when I think back to those beginning stages of our marriage, it does feel like, okay, that probably was 15 years ago. We've lived a lot of life between then and now. We've lived in how many different states? Do you know off the top of your head?
I think it's like 4.
No, is it? I think it might be more than that.
5.
I'm going to count them up. And two different countries. Right. Yeah. We've had babies in 2 different countries.
Yeah.
We had one born in Canada and the other 2 in Texas. And we've experienced loss along the way. We've experienced great victories along the way. And it truly is, though, still without a shadow of a doubt, I know that you are the greatest gift apart from my salvation that God has ever given me. And I'm so thankful for you and for our marriage, and we're going to talk about some of the things that I think we're doing right, and some of the things that we've done wrong along the way.
Right.
And I hope, girls, that you're watching with me, you'll feel comfortable to share some of your victories, some of your triumphs, and maybe some of those moments too that you've learned from and have grown and have become better because of them. So, when it comes to marriage, there's so much that we can talk about. We could be on here for a lot longer than the 30 minutes than what we have, but I want to chat specifically about a concept that I first heard about from a speaker, and then later read one of, I think, the most influential books that has shaped the way that I view marriage, and it's called Love and Respect. And the concept is based on the idea that the thing that men need the most from their wives is respect.
Yeah.
And the thing that women need the most from their husbands is love. Right. And this concept isn't just a concept that was thought up by some great marriage counselor or well-educated person. It's something that we read about in the Word of God. And in Ephesians chapter 5, there's a whole passage that talks about specifically addressing how wives should treat their husbands and how husbands should treat their wives. And we see in this passage of scripture, wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord. And so right away we hear this need for respect, for women to respect their husbands. And I was reminding the kids at dinner, you remember last week I was telling them the story of our very first date.
Oh, yeah.
And I know you remember our first date.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell everybody watching what we did for our first date together?
Yeah, so we were living in Waterloo at the time in Ontario in Canada. It's about 45 minutes to an hour outside of the city of Toronto. Mm-hmm. And so we had reservations at this market, kind of restaurant.
Yeah, it was super cool.
Very trendy and cool. Like you could go get like all different kind of ethnic foods, and Chinese and Italian, or like just all kind. It was, you just kind of walk around and some of the stuff that make like right there in front of you. It was
perfect. We didn't even know each other really well. We had only been kind of hanging out for a short period of time, but it was just like the perfect restaurant. I loved it. Mm-hmm. And then after we went up to the CN Tower, and there is a restaurant at the top of the CN Tower, and we had dessert and coffee and just relaxed and talked up there. Yeah. It was at night, so the city lights, and I believe that the restaurant rotates. Does it? Or is that a different one? I don't think we were at that particular restaurant, but it was kind of one of those, the tall CN Tower, and then we took some time just overlooking the city, and but what I was telling my kids is that one of the things that was so important to me when we were dating is I wanted to make sure that you were somebody that I could respect, and
that's important.
It is important, and I was at the time already in a leadership position at the church that we both attended. I was on staff there, and I was on the pastoral staff, and I was a young woman at the time. I was 25, 26, and there were not, there weren't many other women that were my peers that were in that position. And so it was really important to me that the man that I was going to date and possibly marry would be somebody that was strong, that I could respect. And one of the kind of tests that I had decided for the evening that of course you didn't know about.
Right, but before that, you need to let everyone know that I wasn't a pastor.
That's true.
So that's true. Just to preface, I was not in the ministry. I was not a pastor, not on any track to be a pastor. I was working as a custom cabinet maker.
Yeah.
And with no thoughts of going into the ministry.
Good point. Yeah. So those people that didn't know us back then wouldn't know that. They only know us as Pastor Mike and Susie. But at the time, I was Pastor Susie and you were Mike.
Yeah.
And I loved that. I, first of all, did not want to marry a pastor or anyone in ministry, so that checked my box. But it was really important to me that I married somebody who would be the leader in my home, who would, be the spiritual leader in my home and our home. And so it was important to me that on that date, when we had dinner, that you would take the initiative to pray over our meal. And it might seem like a silly thing to you, but when you wear the title of pastor and you're in any kind of social setting, generally you are the person that's turned to pray over the meal, which I love. I think that's a great thing to do. I enjoy it. But in my marriage, I wanted to make sure that the person that I was going to connect my life with for the rest of my life was strong enough to lead me. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy to say you passed the test, and you were telling me and the kids about that moment that it wasn't a big deal to you.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it. Like it wasn't something that even
about
I never, and this is probably just part of my personality, but I never would have asked you or any other
to pray.
No. I'm out on a date. The last thing I'm going to do is ask the woman to pray. To me, that seems absurd.
That it's kind of tips your hat to being maybe not confident, maybe a little arrogant, what do you think?
Yeah,
just comfortable in who you were.
Yeah, I'm comfortable in who I am, and I just come from that maybe more traditional background where the man takes the lead in those things, and and I'm not intimidated by people very easily.
Right.
And that's why we work.
That's why it worked. Yes.
You know, because
Absolutely.
there are, you know, guys that were intimidated by your leadership, by your, you know, spiritual life and being a pastor, and that wasn't me, and it's not me.
No, yeah, and I loved that about you. I love that confidence that you carried, and you know, when you're in your early 20s or your mid 20s and all of your friends are that age, I think some people can be intimidated, and I loved that you were not in any way, shape, or form. You were just like, this is who I am. Yeah. And we didn't date for a very long time. From our first date to our wedding day was...
What's crazy is the first date from engaged to engagement.
That's true.
That is...
So why don't you go ahead and share
that was
the time
6
frame.
weeks.
From the time we had our first date till the time that you proposed to me was 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And you actually asked my dad for my hand in marriage.
That's true.
I think at like 2 weeks we had been
dating. You say it now and I'm like,
ooh, crazy.
That was. But at the time it didn't. At the time you just knew. And I'm like, why drag this thing out? Let's get this ball rolling and
all the pieces.
Start our lives. I knew. And so.
Yeah.
But now when you say it out loud, it's like,
we're kind of careful of who we tell that story to, because
clearly not now.
Well, now you all know. But I do want to caution any young women that are watching that, you know, we were at a kind of a different place in our lives, and had also sought counsel before we even started dating. And throughout our you know, engagement, we were, you know, under the submission of our pastors. We asked them what they thought.
And we did a lot of homework, if you will, on the front end. Before both of us did. Before we even started dating, we were investigating, if you will, the other person to find things out. Because we were both working full time in our careers, you know, and we were, you know, I was young, but I had, you know, I was in my career, I was working full time and independent. You know, you moved to another country and same thing. And so, you know, we were a different stage. We didn't felt like we needed to date for years.
We weren't dating for fun. We were dating because we wanted to know who God had for us to be with. And
exactly. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I think if we came to the point that we saw this isn't who God has for me, we would have both quickly broken off the relationship. We wouldn't have carried it on just because we were having a good time or we were having fun or anything like that. It was we both had the same values when it came to that.
Yeah.
So talking about this concept of respect and, you know, me respecting you and giving you respect, how important is that to you as just a human being? Like, do you agree with that men need respect from their wives?
Yeah, and I think most men they might not be able to put their finger on it, and I don't even think I did until you started talking about it.
Yeah.
It's something that just gets a rise out of me when you feel disrespected, but it's something that I couldn't necessarily put my finger on. Yeah, I couldn't articulate like what is it, but I know that when someone or, you know, you do this, I know it makes me feel this way and I react, and usually not well.
Right. So what are some ways what are some things that I do that make you feel respected? Or what are some things that I've done that don't make you feel respected?
Man, I mean, especially with our kids, that, you know, always talking about, you know, how hard I work, and you know your dad's working hard so that we can, you know, and have this and this, and you know what I mean, and just like, you know, kind of reaffirming that, you know, the things that we enjoy. And kids, you know, they're kids, they don't understand, they don't have a concept of what costs money and what doesn't.
Yeah.
They want to go to Disney World every year. It's like, well, slow down. And they don't have really an idea of this is how much money. We've never shared how much money we make or
right.
Or anything like that. But they have no concept of I only make a certain amount of money and we have to make a mortgage payment and we have to we bills and things that we have to pay and there's only so much left over. And so, but you've always done a really good job with, because I think every man wants his family to know that I work hard.
To take care of us.
To take care of you.
Yeah.
And to be able to and I think every man wants to not just take care of his family, but, not just survive, but thrive, but,
right.
be able to do some of those, fun things, go on nice vacations, be able to, buy a nicer car or to be able to have nice clothes or to, and so it's, it's this psyche that's built into at least me and I think most men and so that really helps and I feel really respected when, you talk about me to the kids like that it's like you're almost building me up that it's like, hey, this is what your dad does for us. And
I think there's a constant stress and pressure that you carry that I don't when it comes to providing for our family.
Right.
And so making sure we have what we need, we have a good home to live in, we have food, we have those basic and more.
Yeah.
You carry that and you feel that in a way that I just never will. And so it means, I think, more to you than it probably does to me. And, it also makes me think about when we talk about the idea of respect of how I talk about you, not just in front of the kids, but to other people that are important in my life. And one of the things that I've always tried to do is to be careful, even when I'm frustrated or I'm upset with you, of who I'm sharing that information with.
Right.
That I'm not calling my girlfriend, I'm not calling my mom, I'm not, I'm going to God first. Like that's how it should happen is I should be going to God first and then talking to you.
Right.
Instead of running to my mom or running to a friend because that shapes the way other people think about you and your relationship with them. And not to say that I've never done it before, that I've never complained to a friend about you or I've never, vented in a way that I shouldn't.
Right.
But it's something that I do try to have as a principle to be careful.
Yeah, and I think you want the people around you and that are close to you to view your spouse in a positive light.
Yeah.
And so, and I do the same thing. I don't, I can't.
No, yeah, you're really
I honestly can't think of
a
single time that I've told someone,
complained about
like like maybe like a flippant, kind of one like, oh, Susie's late or like, oh, this or oh, Susie ordered lunch and it didn't show up or something.
Which happened today.
But like nothing like really deep, like I was like really personal, like hurt and something we were really fighting about, and I picked up the phone and called someone and said Susie and just and went off. And I don't want to say that there's, if you do that, if you have a close friend that's wrong. I don't want people to think that, because I think it's healthy to share and to be able to relieve some of those things, but I would pick one.
Right. And I wouldn't be a female. Like you would not be sharing that with another woman, and I would never share that with another man, because there is research that shows that emotional affairs are started from one spouse complaining about their spouse to somebody of the opposite. And that's something else that you've been really good about, and I could see from very early on in our marriage was that you were very respectful. If there was somebody that you had a relationship, like a romantic relationship in the past, that if you ever had a conversation with them, or I remember one time someone that you had dated prior to me had Facebook messaged you, and you right away came to me and you showed me the message, and you also showed me your response that you had written out to them, and that was just such a defining moment in our marriage to me, because it really made me feel valued, but it also made me feel that our marriage is just so important to you that you're willing to put that extra accountability on yourself.
Yeah.
And that's something that you've always been really good at. Even in the times that, like, if we're having an argument or a disagreement, you would always say things like, no, this is important enough that we need to talk about it. Whereas I might be like, I'm fine. Let's just leave it.
When clearly you're not fine.
When clearly.
Guys, they're clearly not fine. When they say I'm fine, they're not fine.
But you would say, like, hey, this is so important that we need to work this out. And again, we've made so many mistakes along the way. And when I look back to who we were in our first year of marriage compared to who we are now, there are still patterns and there are still things that we can tend to fall into.
Right.
But I think we are better at.
But I feel like, and I don't mean this arrogantly, but I think we make mistakes in the little things, not the big things.
Oh, that's good.
And I'm okay making mistakes, and even if they're over and again in the little things. But those big things, like showing you a text message or a Facebook message from really even almost any female, especially one that I dated, and now that was obviously a long time. But when we were first married, because you see movies, you hear stories and things, and it's just like, there's nothing in it. So I don't, because there's going to be a problem if I try to hide it. And not that I would be trying to hide it, but if I don't mention or say something, and then and I don't delete anything.
Right.
None of my text messages, none of my Facebook messages. Like, you could literally go back to 2010 when I started Facebook almost, and see all the messages, and because I want to, be able to see that history, and you'll be on my phone for something, and can see it.
Yeah, I can always go on your phone. It's never an issue. I have all of your passwords.
Yeah.
Everything's open, and vice versa.
Right.
Although I can't think of a time that you've ever really checked out my phone to see what's going on. But I think we've always had that openness and freedom. But I did want to say, if that is something that has been an issue in your relationship, that it's so important to have accountability. So to have things set in place that you are being accountable with, messages. I know there are some people that have husbands and wives have shared Facebook accounts, and maybe that's something that they need to have.
Right.
And so, any extra accountability is always a good thing when it comes to your marriage, because if I guess the way I look at it is that marriage is more than this person that I'm committing to. It's a calling, that I'm called to be your wife and you are called to be my husband, and God has something that he wants to do in our lives and through our marriage and through our relationship. And so discipleship is happening in our own lives through our relationship. And so as much as you need respect and you need to feel respected by me, I in turn need to feel loved. And there's this kind of like pride part of me that wants to be like, I don't need to be loved. Like, I don't need your love to survive. And truly, my goal in life is that the love of Christ is enough for me. That, that's ultimately what I need to get through. But in our relationship, in our marriage, there are times I think if I do complain about something, it's, one of the complaints that I've had at different times in our marriage is, I don't want to feel like your roommate.
Right.
We might not be fighting. We might not be arguing. We might be getting along perfectly fine.
Right.
There might be peace in our house. But if I just feel like I'm your roommate, that we're just doing this life together, I don't want to be that.
Right. And it's so easy in this life because we're so busy. That, you know what I mean? Like, you can be going in and out. We both work full time. Kids have sports and music and friends, and and the older the kids get, the busier they get, and you can just get, and you tend to stay up later. I tend to go to bed earlier, and get up earlier, and so it could very easily
which even
start
that,
to feel like that.
Yeah, even that I feel like has had a little bit of a negative impact. Just that you go to bed first and get up early. I go to, so we have to make up because we're not having that same connection every day that we would have by going to bed at the same time or waking up at the same time. But that same passage of scripture that's talked about wives submitting to their husbands as to the Lord, a few scriptures down says, husbands, love your wives. So you see that need for love. And it goes on to say, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. And so that's such an intense calling that you have. Like, you are called to love me in a way that Jesus loved the church. And we know Jesus' love led him to a cross. It led him to a sacrifice.
Right.
And so that's the kind of love that you are called to love me with. And
that's a lot of pressure.
Sometimes it's hard just to get up and want to make your spouse a cup of coffee. Because we're so selfish.
Yeah.
Like, I think if there's any one, like, number one enemy of marriage, it's our own human selfishness. That I'm selfish, I want my life and my world to be ordered around me, and you're the same. And so marriage is a constant, I think, combating and laying your life down and thinking of the other person. And that's not just something that we see just in marriage. We read this in 1 Peter chapter 4, just talking to the church in general, not specifically about marriage, but just about any relationship. It says, above all, have fervent and unfailing love for one another, because love covers a multitude of sins. And that is one thing I think that we have gotten right, is that I think we're good at putting the past in the past.
Yeah.
So when you offend me or when I offend you, I think we're both pretty good at allowing love to cover those sins rather than reminding each other of their sins or their feelings.
Right, like the next fight or the next disagreement. We don't tend to bring up, wow, last year or last month, or you know what I mean? Like, now if it's a pattern, that's one thing. Like, I have noticed last, whatever, but just one-off disagreements or fights that we don't bring up the past, and we try to, bury those and leave those in the past, and because that's a dangerous road. Because like, what is that? What are we arguing about the past? Are we arguing about that? Like, what? And it's not fair to it's like, do you really forgive and forget? Or, clearly if you keep bringing it up, you really...
There's some more forgiveness, more work that needs to happen there in your relationship when it comes to that topic and forgiveness. And, I think I even have to be careful the way I say this, because I know there are probably women that are watching that have had very deep betrayals by their spouses. And so forgiveness is something that you are still working on. And I just want to affirm you and recognize that is a work and it's a process. And if it's still something you're working on, that's okay. Just keep allowing God to work on it, right? Don't just stay in that same place. And so no matter where you are in your marriage, marriage is work, and it's okay for it to feel like work sometimes, because it's that constant sacrificing of yourself, and that's not going to feel good. There are moments that it feels really good, that we have this incredible connection and intimacy, and you feel loved by the other person. But then there are a lot of moments too that it's painful. It hurts to sacrifice yourself for another person. And so if you are struggling, I would love to pray for you and encourage you. I definitely recommend that book, Love and Respect. But I also want to share, if you are single and hanging out with us today at the Pink Seat, do not settle. Keep praying and asking God for the person that He has for you. I promise you, it is worth the wait. It is absolutely worth the wait. And I still remember when we were engaged, driving and just thinking about our relationship and our future marriage and feeling so overwhelmed and excited for what God had for me. And I remember thinking, every day that I waited for you to come into my life was worth it, and I would wait every one of those days again. So if that's you, hang on. Believe that God has an incredible partner for you. And I hope you guys enjoyed hanging out with me at the Pink Seat. Oh my goodness, that just flew by, didn't it? So we're going to have to do this again. And I would love to hear your story. So drop a comment. Let me know where you are, how you guys are doing. And we'll see you next week on the Pink Seat.